Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's American City and County webinar, Signature Automation, the fastest way to improve process efficiency. I'm Bill Wolpin. I'm American City and County's Editorial Director. I'll be your moderator today. And from what I know of the several times we have worked with ARX on this subject, this is going to be an interesting and informative hour on what has become, I believe, a hot trend in local and state government. I'd also like to thank today's sponsor, co-signed by ARX, for making this event possible. Before we begin, just a few words about our Webcast Technology. This webinar platform allows our audience to be more involved with the presentation, and more importantly, it allows you to watch this event the way you want to watch it. For example, you can customize your webcast console. You can move windows around by dragging on the title bar or resize your windows by clicking on the lower right-hand corner of any window. You'll notice a toolbar at the bottom of your console. These buttons allow you to open and close widgets on your screen. We also invite you to get social. If you hear something interesting, tweet it to your followers using the Twitter widget. This is true at any time if you experience technical difficulties with the audio or advancing the slides. Simply press your F5 key to refresh your webinar console. You can also download the slides for this webinar by clicking on the folder icon on your screen. You can do this during the webinar, and it won't interrupt the presentation. We also appreciate your feedback, so please take a moment to answer the short feedback form on the left side of your webinar console. Finally, you don't have to wait to the end to ask questions of our speakers. We will have our speakers address those questions at the end, but don't wait. Ask them as you think of them. Just put them on in, because the speakers then can look at them, review them, and have a little more time to decide the answers to those questions. So that's the housekeeping. Let me introduce today's presenters. First, we have Mauricio Pinto. Mauricio is the Director for State and Local Government at co-signed by ARX, where he has been instrumental in educating government agencies and organizations on digital signatures and bringing them on board with co-sign. He was previously Director of Healthcare Solutions at Laserfish Document Management. Mauricio began his career as a CPA at Coopers & Lybrand, worked as a financial controller for 10 years, and for the last 15 years focused on sales and marketing of software application. He's written several white papers on using technology to increase efficiency in organizations and has been interviewed by numerous articles on many publications. Joining Mauricio, we have David Eisenlohr, Director of Information Services at Contra Costa County, California. David's a graduate of Rensselaer Polytechnic Institute in Troy, New York, where he earned a Bachelor of Science degree in Computer Systems Engineering. Dave has over 30 years of experience in information technology in the securities industry and in general business prior to joining the county's Employment and Human Services Department. As Director of Information Services and Information Technology Manager 2, Dave has managed its IT infrastructure for the past 7 years. His focus has been on technology and data solutions, process improvement, and systems design. Now with that, let me turn the stage over here to Mauricio. Mauricio, this floor is yours.
Thank you, Bill. Hello, everybody. Thank you for joining us today. The topic today is signature automation, how you can easily achieve it and how it can easily help your organization become more efficient. To that end, today we're going to talk about what signature automation is. We'll discuss your top 3 technology options. We'll talk about things you should consider when evaluating and implementing digital signatures specifically, although we'll talk about other forms of technology. We'll be joined by our guest speaker from Contra Costa County, and we'll allow plenty of time for your questions. Put simply, signature automation refers to the combination of electronic signature and electronic workflow, which often is part of your enterprise content management system. I should point out 2 things here. The first is that I use the term ECM generically to also include things like document management, records management, case management, or any kind of electronic document management system you might have in-house. The other important point is that even without a formal ECM, signature automation can be simply using email and electronic documents. The real point is not to have to print to paper, simply for purposes of capturing a signature. Most of us started this journey to paperless by scanning records to electronic format after they've been processed. Today, the objective is to never have paper, to author a document electronically, route it electronically, capture signatures if needed electronically, store it electronically, and validate it electronically. Now, in the past, when I do these webinars, we'd spend a fair amount of time talking about these two things, the legality of electronic signatures and the difference between electronic and digital signatures. With regards to the first point, let's agree that the legality of electronic signatures is established by federal and state law, even by industry-specific regulations, and it's been upheld in court. Now, that doesn't mean that your particular municipality's legal counsel has okayed it for you to use, or that the chief judge in your court has agreed to use this new-fangled technology, but it does mean that at all levels of government across the country, departments and agencies are using electronic signature. It is mainstream. With regards to the difference between electronic signatures, we'll make sure that it's clear as we drill down into digital signatures. But think of digital signatures as a specific type of electronic signature. In the next slide here, we'll talk about your 3 technology choices, and digital signature may or may not be the one that's right for you. But at the end of the day, here's what you want to focus on with whatever technology you choose. Government entities have to demonstrate compliance and transparency. You need to be able to prove who approved what and when without any risk of deniability. And it's usually not today you have to worry about, but you have to be able to prove these things 5, 10, and 20 years from now. There are a lot of electronic signature options out there, but in the context of secure and proven signature automation, we're going to talk about 3 very different types for you to think about. The first is to look at what you already have. There's signature functionality provided by your ECM system, and again, I'm using ECM generically. Whether you're using SharePoint or Laserfish or Oracle or any other ECM, these systems are secure. You log in securely, and they track everything you do once you're logged in. So if within that application you check a box that says approved or signed, or if you fill in a template field with a reason for approving or signing, all of this is captured and can be validated by anyone that is also logged into the system. So we'll come back to that. The second option for you to consider are your Sass vendors. They accurately present themselves as transaction management solutions because that is their strength, routing documents to external parties for signature. So if you want Mary Smith at ABC Company to sign a document, you upload the document with her email and contact information to the vendor website. Mary receives an email with a link to the website so that she can view the document and sign it electronically. You can track the status of the signature, and once it's signed, you can both download a copy for your records. The verification, however, is performed by the particular vendor. This is important, and we'll revisit that in a few minutes. The third option is digital signature, where each signer is issued a unique signing certificate and signing key. Before they sign, they authenticate who they are, and at signing, the certificate information gets embedded in the document so that it can be independently verified by anyone. Adobe does the verification if it's a PDF, and Microsoft does the verification if it's an Office document. The downside to this technology is that until recently it was cumbersome to deploy. So we'll come back to that as well. So how do you decide what's appropriate for you? The first step is actually easy. Look at what your document management system offers and whether it meets the requirements of your users. And you simply need to ask two questions. Are all of the proposed signers also all users of the ECM system? If the functionality is specific to the system, obviously they all have to be users of the system in order to sign. The second important question here is, must the signature and the document be verifiable by someone outside the system or even outside of the organization? So if both the signers and the people that need to verify the signatures are all users of the same ECM system, you're good to go. Otherwise, you need to look at your other two options. For this, you'll want to gather requirements from your user population, but I suggest you start with an initial series of questions that will quickly point you in the right direction. So we can start with who is signing. Is it primarily staff that want to sign documents locally, or is it primarily outside parties, which could be your partners, your vendors, contractors, even your constituents? The Sass solutions have been considered more ideal for external signers, while the digital signature solutions have been considered more ideal for staff and contractors. But technology is always evolving, and it's not always as simple as that. So you need to ask additional questions. You want to understand what they're signing and what format they want to keep it in. The Sass solutions will typically only sign PDFs. And while anything can be converted to a PDF, maybe your users need to sign Word or Excel documents and keep them in that format. Maybe they want to sign InfoPath forms or Nintex forms or K2 forms. And yes, we all know that InfoPath 2013 was the final release of that product, but it will be supported for years to come, and many of you will continue to use it. And by the way, even if you're okay with just using PDF, the size of the document is critical if you have to frequently route them through a third-party website. I work with a number of transportation authorities, for example, that create engineering documents in AutoCAD or Bentley. They convert them to very large PDFs, and they need to route them for review and approval. A Sass solution would simply not be feasible for this scenario. You want to find out how often your users are signing. This is important simply because a person that signs once or twice a month will be less concerned about the process itself than someone that's signing regularly or daily. A heavy signer will also need more flexibility in terms of what information is presented in the final signature information. He or she will want to know whether the fields can be set up on standard documents ahead of time and saved, or whether they can sign on the fly and related functionality like that. Find out if your users will be signing at their PCs or on the road. Will they need to sign from home or from tablets? Has your organization created an employee or vendor or constituent portal where the users log in, they complete or review a form, and then sign it? Clearly, having signers electronically come to you to complete and sign a form is more efficient than emailing it out and then having to track it and chase the signature. But not every organization is at a point where they have portals set up for this purpose. And you also want to find out whether your user needs to sign inside and or outside of the ECM. Two final questions. The first is it okay for documents to route through a third-party website? For many of you, the answer is yes, but for some of you, the answer is absolutely not. Whether it's the size of the file that's an issue or the sensitivity of the record, it will not work for certain scenarios, and if so, you'll want a solution that always maintains the document under your own control. And finally, is it okay if the verification of the signer's information is proprietary, meaning that you will always rely on the solution vendor for the verification today and in 20 years. The only way not to have a proprietary verification is to issue a unique signing certificate to each and every signer, which is, of course, digital signature. Now, to be clear, technology advances quickly. I fully expect the Sass vendors to soon offer individual certificates so that the verification process is not proprietary. And digital signature solution vendors are already starting to offer email routing as an option. So you'll see the functionality gap get smaller over time, which will benefit you. In the event that your analysis of your user population requirements points you in the direction of digital signatures, this is where we're now going to drill down. Digital signatures comply with international standards, and the applicable one in the U.S. is Federal Information Processing Standard 186-4. It defines a digital signature as one that allows the identity of the signer and the integrity of the signed document to be verified. Further, it specifies 3 components. Each signer is issued a unique signing certificate that identifies the signer. Each signer is issued a unique signing key, which results in the certificate information being embedded in the document, along with a unique algorithmic hash for the specific document. It also includes a public key that travels with the document so that anyone, anywhere can verify the above information. The issuer of these components is called a certificate authority, or a CA. It can be a third party like GlobalSign, Comodo, Entrust, Symantec. There's dozens of organizations that issue certificates. Or it can be the organization itself. Some of you do this already with Microsoft Certificate Services. Regardless of who issues the certificate and the signing key, the important thing is to have a documented standard procedure for how the CA authenticates the identity of the signer prior to issuing the certificate and the key. For your employees, this is done during the hiring process, so it's redundant. But procedurally, it becomes important if part of your project is to issue certificates to contractors or vendors or any external party. And how do you know that only the authorized signer is using the key? Well, this part will vary with the solution used to sign, but before you sign, you should be required to prove your identity. It could be a password, or more ideally for your employees, it should be their Active Directory credentials, which they're using on a daily basis anyway. Or you should be able to double up with what's called a second factor form of authentication. In other words, using more than one method to authenticate your identity. The nice thing about standard digital signature is that it is natively supported both for signing and for validating by a number of application vendors, the obvious ones being Microsoft and Adobe. You can send that document to anyone, anywhere in the world, and they'll be able to validate who signed it and that nothing has changed, with visible evidence if anyone has in fact changed the document. Are there drawbacks to digital signature? Yes, if you deploy the old-fashioned way, which is to say if you deploy in a decentralized fashion. What happens in this scenario is that the signing key and usually the certificates also have to be deployed on every signer's PC or on something they carry around, a USB key or a smart card. They have to renew these things annually, or now some of the CAs are offering biannual renewals. And if someone leaves, of course, you have to run around and get back the USB or the smart card or uninstall the signing key from their computer. This is not a big deal if you're talking about a few signers, if you have a small department. But as you roll out to hundreds or thousands in the case of many of you, you can see how it quickly becomes logistically problematic. And that has been the single biggest challenge to the traditional way of deploying digital signatures. In addition, at the moment of signing, it is desirable to use an authentication mechanism that you already use in your organization. More ideally, you should also be able to manage your signers from within Active Directory. And even if you wanted to provide a signing capability for contractors or vendors that you work with regularly, the best you can do is purchase the certificate for them. You really have no control over how they use it, when they use it, and it would be difficult to uninstall it once it's issued to them. If a signing key resides on your PC or even on a USB, there is no easy way for it to interact with your iPad or your smartphone, right? In fact, it would be difficult to sign a document using a web application unless you're able to download the actual document locally and then sign it the old-fashioned way. All of these issues disappear if you focus on digital signature solutions that are centralized. In a centralized deployment of digital signatures, the certificates and the keys are stored and managed in a secure network appliance. Technically, these are appliances known as hardware secure modules, or HSMs. They're designed specifically for this purpose. They're available as both on-premise and vendor-hosted. But for your purposes, they look and act like servers. And by the way, when I say hosted, that doesn't mean that your documents are ever routed through them. These appliances store the certificates and the keys. They authenticate the signer. They create the signature details. They transmit those details back for embedding in the document locally. The actual documents never leave your control, and that's an important distinction to make. These servers offer integration to Active Directory, which has two benefits to you. The first is that you can actually manage your signer population from security group and AD. The second is that they can, of course, use their Active Directory credentials for authentication and or double up if you feel that that's important. If you don't want to use Active Directory, or if the focus of your project is external signers, then these appliances come with built-in directories. You can use either an included internal CA, or you can use a third-party certificate. And because these certificates are now stored centrally, it doesn't really matter where you sign from. You can sign from home, you can sign from any PC, as long as that device can connect to the central server. This also means that you don't have to sign the documents locally. You can sign using web applications. So most of you that have ECMs can use a browser-based solution to view documents and sign them without ever having to check the document out and sign it locally. And you can also download applications that let you view and sign and send back email attachments directly on your phone. This is the new generation of digital signatures, and I apologize, this is the only blatant plug I have for Cosign, but it succinctly carries the message of centralized management. You should have one signing engine and many different ways to sign that accommodate your user requirements. You may have signing software, you might use web apps, you might use your mobile applications, you might use your document management connectors, etc. For the end users, they should also have flexibility to decide what the signature should look like. So you want to make sure that they have functionality to decide what, if any, of the following components are included: your name, your title, your reason code, date and timestamp, your organizational logo, even a graphic signature image, which could be your full name, it could be your initials. In the case of engineers, you have engineering seals. In the case of notaries, you have notary seals. So again, these are images that are associated with your signer profile, and they're all securely stored in the same central appliance. There's integration with Microsoft Office specifically, not with PDF, but with Office, that lets you specify that a particular signature will protect a certain section of the document. This allows other people to make changes outside of the protected area, and this is handy for folks in finance or HR. And of course, you want to be able to sign both inside and outside of your ECM. As I mentioned earlier, a number of application vendors already provide native support for signing and validating digital signatures. As an absolute worst case, you can always convert a document to a supported format and then sign it. The same is true of your ECM systems. If you're using something that isn't listed here, if you're using something that isn't listed here, your absolute worst case is that you check out the document, sign it locally, and then check it back in. We refer to that as side-by-side use of digital signature. I'm not going to get into all the details here. I did want to talk a little bit about what we consider the entry points for digital signatures in your own organization and department. It may vary. But again, I want to give you a very obvious example of the kinds of efficiencies and cost savings that can be generated, and then you can extrapolate that to your own environment. If we focus on engineering again, without a digital signature solution, they might be signing these AutoCAD drawings natively because AutoCAD supports digital signature. They would print out these giant rolls that we've all grown accustomed to seeing, and they would physically use a courier to send it around for review and approval. Today, these organizations will simply convert that engineering diagram to a PDF and use an email to route it around for review and approval. So you can see how this quickly revolutionizes the procedures around review and approval of these documents, and you can apply that to any of the departments in your organization. Our host recently administered a survey. Some of you may even have participated in it, so I want to wrap up my portion of the presentation by pointing out a few of the key results in this survey. The first is that a third of you are already using digital signatures, and another half see the need for digital signatures. There were approximately 4 very key requirements for your digital signature solution. Ease of implementation. This all coincides with what we've been discussing. Control over the user management was a key requirement. In addition, you expressed concern over the security of the signed information. And it has to be easy for your users to use, otherwise they won't adopt it. In terms of the results of people that have adopted digital signatures, you can guess at the results: increased efficiency and quicker turnarounds on signature approvals. So that wraps up my portion of the presentation, guys. In the spirit of co-opetition these days, we actually partner with one of the Sass vendors. We partner with several of the certificate authorities, third-party certificate authorities. So if you have any doubts, if you have any questions, feel free to reach out to me. I'd happily point you in the right direction. Okay, and now it is my pleasure to introduce our guest speaker. We have David Eisenlohr, Director of Information Systems at the Employment and Human Services Department of Contra Costa County, California. He's going to talk about their experience selecting and implementing digital signatures. David?
Thank you, Maurice. It's a pleasure to join your webinar. First, I'll give you a little background on Contra Costa County. We serve a very diverse county. We have over 1 million residents. Within roughly 800 square miles. We're the ninth largest county in the state. We have 19 cities, 21 unincorporated areas, with 3 geographically distinct regions. We have a diverse population as well, Caucasian, Hispanic, African American, Asian Pacific, and American Indian. We also have an average income of $62,000, but it does vary all over the map. Some of our cities much less than that. We also have cities where it's much more than that. Our unemployment average is 6%, but again, that varies all over by location within our diverse county. 11% of our population has income below the poverty level. We have nearly 2,000 staff located in 32 facilities throughout the county. And last year we served 150,000 residents in our county. The project we're talking about is to help Children and Family Services. This was the initial impetus behind this whole issue of electronic signatures. Our Children and Family Services provide service to children and families of Contra Costa County to help them remain strong together, to reunify them if removal from the home is necessary. Children and Family Services workers are required to intervene and ensure the child's safety, placing children in out-of-home care and involving the juvenile court as necessary. As you can imagine, the Children and Family Services cover screening and investigation of referrals, but basically most of the programs involved with Children and Family Services also have heavy interaction with the juvenile court. So the goals for Children and Family Services help the family strengthen, provide, monitor alternate living situations, and help children achieve permanency in their lives. But the process with the courts is very, very cumbersome. The social workers would prepare the court documents. The supervisors would review them. Then the social workers would prepare the hard copy and sign the documents, then hand the documents to the supervisor or put them in the interoffice mail to the supervisor to sign the documents. Then they get notarized. Then the worker would create copies for all the participants, and then the workers would schedule couriers to deliver these documents to the court, to both the representing lawyers for the children and for the family. Sometimes it's 3 different members: the child, representative, the mother and the father, and other affected parties. And obviously the original has to go to the courts. The courier would return with signed receipts, which are logged, but undelivered packets are also rescheduled for delivery. Needless to say, a very complicated process. So Contra Costa County, Employment and Human Services, we went through an RFI process, actually, request for information, providing immediate, and our objectives in this process were to provide immediate access to client documents, reducing the potential for mishandled and lost documents that are inherent in paper documents. We wanted to reduce or minimize the cost to couriers since we had usually a minimum of 5 parties where these couriers had to go to for each court document. And we do address tens of documents a day, so it was clearly a notable expense. But we also wanted to improve our staff's work experience. Obviously, the copying and arranging the couriers and tracking that was very time-consuming. And we wanted to improve the audit trail process of recording the document delivery. So we go through our RFP process. We publish it on BidSync. Many potential vendors responded, and we selected ARX as the best fit. Functionality that you heard before. They have very excellent functionality. The cost, the ease of installation, the support. So we awarded the contract to them. So now the current process is the social worker prepares the court documents electronically. The supervisor pulls up the document, reviews it, and then the worker then inserts 2 signature fields into the document and signs the first one, sends it to the supervisor who signs the second field. The worker posts the document in SharePoint. SharePoint generates a daily summary of all the notifications to the parties. So understand that the court, for example, they'll get one summary notification of the day of all the documents that were posted for all the different cases that were created that day. A lawyer may handle 2 different cases, so the lawyer receives a daily summary of these 2 cases now have documents posted. So the parties can log into the system and read and or download these files, and they're unable to view any of the other documents that are out there that are not related to their cases. All access is logged, including when the documents are posted. So results for the lawyers. The lawyer participation was optional, but Very quickly, we ended up with 100% of the lawyers embracing the new process. For one, the documents were consistently delivered on time. And what they loved the most was they could work out of their home office or work without relying on paper copies. They knew the system was there. They knew the documents were always readily available. Results for the courts. The courts and the judges, this is family courts and their judges, reviewed the ARX signature process and the electronic delivery and accepted the process on a pilot basis. But after 6 months, they chose to rewrite their rules to make the process permanent. So now our family courts have written into their rules to allow the ARX signature process, co-signed signature process. And for reasons similar to the lawyer, the electronic documents were preferred because here the judges could actually do some of their work from home and looking at the documents that they're going to be dealing with the next day. For our internal staff, the staff spent a lot less time preparing the documents and focused more on the content of the document. This reduced error rates and created a greater confidence in the process. And needless to say, from the management side, the cost of all the software and coding was recovered in 6 months. And I'm referring to not only the co-sign piece, but the programming we did in SharePoint to create a custom application to handle the security controls around this restricted but public website. And it eliminated the copying, the notarizing, and the couriering. So, again, I want to thank you. We're going to be turning this over to questions and answers, I guess, next. So I'm going to turn this back over to Maurice. But, again, you can, I believe, download the slide deck, and you'll have my email address and phone number, too.
Thank you, David. It's Bill, and everyone appreciate your questions, and we're going to jump in here in just a second, but feel free to add questions. We have time. It's a good presentation for both of them, but we have some time for good questions here. So, and let's see, and again, I want to remind a couple of folks here on a couple of housekeeping things. If you have any issues with your audio or your video, that is, just press the F5 key, see if that doesn't make it a little bit better. One person had mentioned that. And also, as you'll learn at the end, the webinar is going to be available on AmericanCityandCounty.com. I'll address that at the very end, just in a few minutes. So let me jump into this group of questions here. This is an interesting one. I believe my state doesn't allow, and Mauricio, maybe this would be good for you to start with. I believe my state doesn't allow or recognize electronic digital signatures. Is there a difference? Well, I think you've described there is. And then what could I do in this situation?
Okay, yeah, thank you, Bill. I am not aware of any state that does not recognize electronic signatures. Again, the applicable laws are e-sign and UETA, U-E-T-A. A couple of states have put out their own version of UETA, but inevitably it mirrors the language of the broader statewide UETA. All of them make electronic signatures legal. So the way to think about it is electronic signatures are legal because they're trying to promote electronic commerce. The particular type of electronic signature that you use will be up to you. But again, I would focus on the criteria that we talked about. Whatever you use should prove the 3 I's: identity of the signer, intent to sign, and integrity. Those are the criteria that will cause you problems in the future. Now, what I did want to add to that particular comment is that there are 2 states in the country that have not taken into account the type of technology that converts the customer themselves into a certificate authority. So therefore they say it's okay to use digital signatures, but if you're going to use digital signatures, you should use one of these approved listed certificate authorities. And again, that doesn't pose any problem as long as the digital signature solution you select works both with external certificate authorities and the one that comes with the solution.
Great. Thanks, Mauricio. This is for David. the question is, are you giving certificates externally? I think I understand that.
The answer is the certificate is embedded in the document. So even if our system goes away at a later date, or we decide to upgrade and change certificates and so on and so forth, the certificate embedded in the document permits validation of that document forever. So I would say that the answer to that question is it is embedded in the document, but not. There is no call back to the server on for certification of a document.
Okay. And Bill, if I can add to that, it could be that the audience member was also trying to find out if Contra Costa County in particular is working with external non-staff people and is issuing certificates to external parties. I don't believe that's the case, right, David?
No.
Okay, thanks. What you'll find, for the sake of the audience, what you'll find is that the technology allows you to issue a certificate to anyone. Now, procedurally, again, it's important for you to have a documented procedure about what steps you take to make sure that it's really Mary Smith at ABC Company before you issue her a certificate so that she can sign with your internal root certificate. So the technology is there. Procedurally, there are some things you should consider. Right. And and I see that he clarified to mean, yes, users outside of your AD group. So in the case of Contra Costa County folks, they're not issuing certificates to external parties. There are a lot of organizations that are.
Good deal. Let's see, David, another question for you here. Can you talk about the process in SharePoint that was set up to alert signers documents were available, especially when there are multiple signers for one function?
When a new document is posted in a particular directory within SharePoint, each directory, we programmed a specific solution in SharePoint to allow managing directories. So each case was a directory, and we pull out of our state, our child welfare system, which attorneys can access that case, and which court for all the parties and who the parties are. It pulls that data out of our child welfare system and creates a security group for that particular folder. So when a new document is posted in SharePoint, SharePoint has a built-in capability to generate immediate, daily, summary, weekly notices of changes to that particular folder. And so there was also programming to facilitate that process. So it pulls that data out and says, who do I need to send this to? And it sends it to those people. But that was all custom programmed to set up the security controls, because we didn't want to notify other people, because this is very confidential data.
Right. The next question, David, again, is maybe you've answered this, but if you haven't, please jump in. And Mauricio, you may have something to add too. Are your documents notarized electronically as well?
The courts have accepted that we no longer needed to notarize them because they were electronically signed, and that signature was validated internally.
Gotcha.
Yeah, and I'll add to that, Bill. So there seem to be a couple of questions around notarization and e-notarization. So if you think about it, the traditional notarization is more about somebody authenticating your identity and witnessing your signing. Today there is a transition to what's called e-notarization, where it attempts to do away with paper. It does not do away with the requirement for somebody to look at your ID and prove that it's really you and then witness your signature. The key difference with this technology is that the process of signing can be done electronically. And states that have adopted e-notarization are effectively using digital signature, where the notary is using an electronic seal, and they'll apply a digital signature that signs and seals the document, and of course, if there's any changes to it after signing, it will be evident. So the short answer to somebody's question is that digital signatures are what is used in e-notarization. The particular solution that is used will vary state by state.
Okay, great. Interesting question here, and Mauricio, I'd ask you to take this one first, and David, you may want to answer it, for your own operation. Is there any data on electronic signature usage in the procurement and or contracting process?
Sure, I can lead the first pass at answering this, Bill. So, whether it's procurement or legal department or HR, ultimately we're talking about internal parties signing documents and possibly external parties signing documents. So the particular department and the use case doesn't necessarily have much of a bearing. The short answer to the question is yes, there are procurement departments and contracting departments using digital signature. Some will use it just for the internal review and approval after the contract has been signed by the external party. Some are actually setting up systems where both the internal and the external party are using digital signatures. And again, that raises the question of, do you want to issue a signing certificate to an external party? The answer will depend on your own internal decision processes.
Right. Okay. I see another question about notary, but I think you've answered, I believe, that, unless somebody else has another question about it. So I think it would be interesting, David, you just spend a minute talking a little about the training process. Internal acceptance, is high on the list, and training is important. So if you have a second, if you would tell the audience they want to know a little about the training process you underwent.
Well, we have basically three different groups. We have the administrators, and that process, because it is an appliance that we used from ARX, the administration training was actually done during the process of implementation, which literally was a one-day event to implement the system. Then the process of training the signers group, the people that would collect signatures. These are the local administrators in each different facility that would have a signature pad at their desk. That was a 30-minute process to walk people through more than once. The process of signing somebody on to the system, capturing their signature and capturing their image of their signature and capturing the name of the person. And that was very quick. The user training literally took. We did videos. We had videos from Cosign that we used. And we even had YouTube videos that we provide to our staff for refresher training if they wish. But we also walk through, because our audience, our staff range from PC literate to PC very illiterate. We ended up using a 30-minute session with them, and it usually took about 15 minutes before they were done, and but sometimes, depending on the audience, it took 30 minutes to kind of walk through and answer all their questions. A lot of it, the questions ended up being much the kind of questions we're answering now, but no more than 30 minutes for all of our hundreds of users that actually use the product internally.
Okay. And related to user adoption, I mean, in the end, is there a way you can describe how it was? In other words, was there fairly quick user adoption? Was it a daunting process for some, as you said? So there were some that were a little more confused with how things work. But overall, how would you summarize the user adoption?
Well, the staff, it made the process so much simpler that the adoption was a non-issue. Mm-hmm. All the people involved saw the benefit. The other side of the coin is that I'm very proud of our Children and Family Services workers in that they really have the family and the children in the forefront. So they readily saw this as a way to provide better service to those to the family and the children. So the adoption there is not an issue. It has never been an issue. They were highly motivated to adopt it. That said, even the PC illiterate, when they walked out of the room, one of the things that was a requirement before they could leave was to be confident that they could sign documents. So we had them signing their own documents. We were collecting signatures in that training process for the most part. The only reason we have signers out in the various fields is now we bring in new staff on a 1Z, 2Z basis. Well, we have to train those. So we actually have the people that they're signers out in the field doing not only collecting the signature, but training them on the process of signing a document. Great.
And the all-important question, basically the implementation, the time it took to implement this system, what is this pretty much from top to bottom for you?
It was the actual implementation of the system was literally, we do some planning, but when it came time to walk the appliance in the door, one day later we're up and running. Then the issue was doing the training, because you have to have the facility in hand. We had, because we were training hundreds of people, we had a week-long event, a series of training sessions that were training not only the signer group, which was our first day, but the rest of the staff on days 2 through 5. And literally we were up and running the next week.
Pretty quick. Mauricio, here's one quick one for you. How would this work with Adobe Acrobat?
Thanks, Bill. That's a good question. So it's not a matter of one or the other. Acrobat, just like Microsoft, supports digital signatures. And all that really means is that when you click sign using their native functionality, the application looks for a certificate. It doesn't care if you buy it from a third party or if you're using a self-managed one, like what a lot of our customers use. The important thing is that the centralized management solution makes it easy to store those signing certificates and keys. Then it doesn't matter what you use to sign. It could be Acrobat, it could be Microsoft, it could be any other type of signing solution. It's really, from a technical standpoint, the focus is on centralized management of users and the signing components, and then from the end user standpoint, how easy is it to sign and what functionality do I have around the signing process.
Good deal. David, another one here for you. How easy is it to add and delete authorized signers?
That's a very important process here in Contra Costa County in that we're signing core documents. But it is extremely easy. All we do is we can still give the person access to their network and all the other functions, but we just pull them out of a particular AD Active Directory group, and they can no longer sign documents. We add them into that Active Directory group. So it's just group permissions, one and done.
Mauricio, did you have a comment?
That's exactly what I was going to say, Bill. Thank you.
Okay, good deal. Well, here's one for me, David. I mean, I believe it's critical. I mean, the research we did on this subject showed that half of the audience, a third of them, I think, had already adopted a digital signature. Half are believe it's important. I mean, do you have any advice for the people who believe it's important, how to begin to get involved? Who should they get involved? That sort of thing. That would be probably help for some of those folks.
Well, I always fall back to project management processes. And it's go out and solicit input from your community, and I'm talking about your company, the staff inside your company. Ask for requirements. Don't talk about the product before you get the requirements down. Getting the requirements down not only communicates that you're interested in serving them, but also interested in delivering an effective solution. So doing that, getting their requirements, then coming back with a solution to meet their requirements is how you can get people to adopt electronic signatures. The need is there in 99% of the organizations. I mean, we had an earlier question about procurement. We're rolling this out not only to our Children and Family Services, but we're now rolling this out across our entire department. And one of the things that I near and dear to my heart is I'm heavily involved in procurement. So I'm sending documents to vendors saying, here's the maintenance contract signed, and so on and so forth. Well, we're heavily using electronic signatures throughout our department for all our managers. So we're about halfway through rolling out to all our management team the same product.
Right. Okay. And and I think in our pre-calls in preparation for this, I guess there are some other people looking at it internally. Is that what you said? Is that, in other words, inside the organization, is there other uses for this that other areas, departments are looking at?
Yes, we're actually looking to roll this out as a standard across the entire county.
Got it. That's what I thought you said. Okay. Well, very good. Listen, folks, we really are right at the top of the hour. There are several people who haven't had their questions answered, and either David or Mauricio or both will get back with you. Individually, we have your emails in your name, so they will get back to you with the answers to the question. I'd also like to thank our presenters, again, Mauricio and David, for their time and excellent information here. And once again, thank our sponsor, co-signed by ARX. I'd also like to remind you, and a couple of questions were along these lines, that the webcast will be on demand, available on AmericanCityandCounty.com within the next 48 hours, and it'll be there available for an entire year. Most of all, we'd like to thank you for joining us today, and we look forward to seeing you again for the next American City and County webinar.